One of the reasons why I achieved financial stability that allowed me to focus on this channel full time for 12 months was shifting my mindset from consumer mindset to ownership mindset, from consumer mindset to wealth building mindset. I knew this concept about 2016, so that has been 9 years now, but I was still a rookie then. I have learned a lot over the years. This was a foreign concept to me in my 20s and 30s, where I spent all the dime that I made. In my 20s and 30s, I viewed stock market as gambling. I didn't know anything about it. I hear on the news all the time about the bulls and the bears, but I never paid attention to it. I was too busy looking good. I was busy wearing my wealth. I was too busy driving my wealth that I didn't have. Knowing what I know now, and one of the many books that have contributed to my knowledge and shift in mindset that tells me as a consumer, as a worker, I actually have a leg up against the Wall Street analysts. This was made famous by Peter Lynch, One Up on Wall Street. Some of the companies he mentioned in his book are outdated. Obviously, when you invest in individual companies, they have their growth period, they have the down period, and they can be way up and they can be totally bankrupt. So even though some of the companies are not relevant today, the principle, the concept behind it is transferable to today's investing. Without going over the detail of the book, as consumers, we know what are the latest and greatest product. We know what is the trend. We know by going to the mall what is popular, what is not popular. And for us as consumer, we know what products we like. And when we go to work, we know what products and services companies use. And if we work in a certain industry, we know quite well what each of those industry entails. For me, I'm always into technology, and I've always been into gaming at a young age. And I'm well versed in the automotive industry as well. So what I know quite well is the technology industry and the automotive industry. As an early adopter and gamers in my early years, I had the first two generations of iPhone. It was first released back in 2007. And gaming laptop back in 2004, they were a premium product, which I paid a handsome $2,000 for it. At the time, NVIDIA was a well-known 3D graphics with their GeForce lineup. Why do I mention these two companies? As a technology enthusiast and as a gamer, I know what gamers like. I know what is the latest and greatest technology. I know what the trend is. So I have an upper hand in terms of what consumer wants. But instead of following the business quarterly earnings, instead of looking at the business financial balance sheet, I help pad their balance sheet by buying their products and services. Let's break down the purchases I made in the past and see how that would translate if, instead of being a consumer of the product, if I became the owner of the company that produced that product. When iPhone first came out back in June 29, 2007, it cost $600, and I purchased that, waited in line for it on my hourly production salary. I bought the first generation iPhone. I also had the second generation as well, and the third. It cost $600 then. And Apple at the time, their price per share, obviously split adjusted. Price per share at the time was $3.68. Instead of buying the iPhone, if I took that $600 cost basis, which essentially what cost me to purchase the shares, at $3.68 a share, that would have bought me 163 shares. And fast forward to January 2025, Apple share is $245 a share. That 163 shares now is equal to 39,946. That is a capital gain of 39,346. That's a fancy word for profit. So basically it takes the total value minus what it cost me. That is the capital gain. That is a total return of 6,557% in 18 years. And then iPhone 12 Pro Max is what I have now, which I purchased back on November 13th, 2020 of $1,099. If you look at Apple stock share price on November 13th, 2020, it was $119.26. So for the price of $1,099, that could have bought me 9 shares of Apple stock. Fast forward to 2025, Apple share price is $245 a share, and total value as of yesterday was $2,258. That is a capital gain or profit of $1,159. It essentially doubled the initial cost. Total return of 105% in 5 years. So in 5 years, I can buy 2 iPhones. Or another way to look at it, delayed gratification. In 5 years, I can buy an iPhone and still have more to invest and harvest later on. And I mentioned earlier, I was also a gamer back in my 20s and 30s. I was an avid gamer as well. And gaming laptop back then was a premium. Back in 2004, I purchased a gaming laptop that was $2,000. And NVIDIA was a publicly traded company at the time, split adjusted. NVIDIA's share price was 19 cents per share back in 2004. For that $2,000 I spent on the laptop, that could have bought me over 10,500 shares. With today's price, NVIDIA is $149.43. That put the value at, ready for this, $1.5 million. That's a capital gain of over 1.57 million. Total return of 78,547% in 21 years. The skeptic in you may say, well, yeah, that's 2004. Who have the 8 ball, right? And it's already too late to jump on the bandwagon. Well, let's fast forward to as recent as 2020. A gaming desktop, which I bought for my 2 kids with a 3070 graphic card, cost $1,700 each. So just take that $1,700. The price of NVIDIA, split adjusted, is $6 per share on January 2nd, 2020. So for the $1,700 for that one desktop, I could have bought 283 shares of NVIDIA. And with today's price per share at $149.43, total value now is $42,339. That is a capital gain profit of $40,639. That is total return of 2,300% in just 5 years. Here's another scenario. What if you have $10,000 to invest? Why did I put $10,000 to invest? Speaking from my experience, I bought a very nice used SUV that cost me $24,000. I could have bought a $10,000 SUV easily, saved me $14,000. I leased a luxury coupe. I could have saved that money and put it toward investment. And in even today's world, instead of buying brand new car, brand new truck, the money that you save can be used to purchase. So $10,000 is not outrageous in terms of the money that can be set aside for investing. For example, instead of me spending $24,000 on that used SUV back when I was in my 20s, and I bought a fairly reasonable car at $14,000, that will put me $10,000 left over. If I were to invest $10,000 into Apple stock back in 2007, that $10,000 would have bought me 2,700 shares. That put a total value of $665,761. Or that $10,000 purchased Apple stock back in November 13, 2020. That would have bought 83 shares worth of Apple stock. Today's value is $20,000. That's still a capital gain of $10,543. If I take that $10,000 in 2004, instead of buying that nice used SUV, looking good driving it, and I purchased NVIDIA instead, that would have bought me 52,631 shares of NVIDIA. And that value today is $7,864,000. Total capital gain of $7,854,000. That same $10,000, if used to purchase NVIDIA back in January 2nd, 2020, that would buy 1,600 shares of NVIDIA. That's today's value of $249,050. That's a capital gain of $239,000. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, it's easy to pick the big fancy companies where they are going through the roof right now. Well, hold your thought there. So let's take a look at owning companies that are not fancy, that are not flashy, that are not tech companies, that are not growth companies. These are just your normal average companies, stores that we as consumer use, we as employees, worker use in our businesses. This fall in line with what Peter Lynch talked about in his book, One Up Wall Street. If you go to Costco parking lot, no matter what it's here or in North Carolina, or, they are busy. You can hardly find a parking spot. And that's a first signal for us as consumer to start looking into the business. Now look at Costco. They just wholesale business, right? But the same $1,700 that I spent on the gaming desktop, if I were to take that $1,700 back in January 2nd, 2020, and buy Costco shares, at the time it was $291 per share, that would have bought me 5.83 shares. Or I can take that $1,700 and buy McDonald's shares. That's $200.79 per share. That would have bought 8.466 shares. And the list goes on. Walmart, Home Depot, Microsoft, Google, Garmin. So if I invested $1,700 in Costco at $291.49 per share, that's 5.8322 shares. Today's price per share is $922.71. So total value today is $5,381. That's a capital gain of $3,681. Total return of 216.55%. So now instead of buying one desktop, I made enough profit to buy two desktops and still have the original money to make more money off of Costco stock. What about McDonald's? McDonald's wasn't as bigger of a growth. They're more of a dividend play, but McDonald's still yield a $772 profit out of $1,700 cost basis. That's a return of 45%. What about Walmart? Low cost shopping center, right? $2,200 profit, 130% return. Home Depot is where people go for lumber, is where people go for gardening stuff, household relating stuff. Profit of $1,300, return of 77% over that 5-year period. Microsoft, $2,800 capital gain, 166% return. And Google, everyone use Google to search. YouTube is owned by Google, and return of $3,200. That's an 189% return. And Garmin, this goes back to Peter Lynch. If you're an outdoor person and you're into running, you know Garmin is a big player in that spot, in that space. For me as a user, I love the Garmin watch. I love the interface. I love the insight that they provide. So that gave me a good indicator to look into that company. Now, if I had $10,000 put into any of these companies, that $10,000 turned into quite a bit of return. Obviously, this is just scratching the surface to get you thinking from how can you shift from being a consumer to being an owner, shifting from being a consumer to being an investor, because that's where the magic happens. Obviously, I never like to give blanket advice, blind advice, so I always show the good side and also show the downside as well. Knowing what product is in, knowing what consumer like is only part of the equation. You can't just go buy stocks of companies that you like, the car that you drive, the clothes that you wear, and the watch that you wear. That's only the first step. Because if you do that, then you can run the risk of losing some of your money or all of your money. If you look at Disney, obviously people love to go to Disneyland. There's Disney Plus, there's ESPN, but it doesn't mean it's a good investment. If you look at their performance, it's actually on a decline since the pandemic. So that's why it's a good start, but not the total picture. AT&T. You use AT&T as well, right? Even though the service sucks, I wouldn't buy them because I don't like the AT&T. Their performance, they haven't been performing that well. Ford, you'd be pretty much give the Ford company its free money for the whole time. Or if you listen to these financial gurus on YouTube, buying what they tell you to buy without doing your own research, you can lose all of your money. Zero. Buying individual stock is only good if you understand what the consumer want, you understand the business model, you know their manager, you know their sales, you know their revenue, you know their earnings per share, you know their net, you know their gross margin, you know their net margin, and you know how much debt they have. All these things are very important. If you're not into reading the financial statement, you don't listen to the quarterly earnings, then you have no business in buying individual stock. In that case, you are better off buying S&P 500, a basket of top 500 US companies, or buying technology sector, a basket of technology companies. To be a good investor for individual company, you have to be keeping up to date on the company, because company can be top of the industry and competitor come and took their businesses. They can be down under, and they can be down, and with the right CEO that bring the right vision and the right execution, they can go right back up, like AMD with Lisa Su. So keeping up to date on a quarterly, yearly basis is extremely important. And as an investor, you should be looking at each of those publicly owned company investor relations site. Every publicly owned company have their investor relations section that you can look into, where you can look at the press releases, you can look at their financial statement, and you can look at their 10K filing. And they are not material for the faint of heart, because they can put you to sleep easily. But these provide very useful business numbers to tell you if you're investing in a growth company or a stagnant company or a declining company. Look at their quarterly result, how they performed for the previous quarter. And then Tesla is another publicly owned company. They also have their slide deck. You can read into all the different things. Unlike other finance YouTube channel out there, instead of telling you go buy S&P 500 and set and forget it, I like to give people option. I like to give people the information, and it's up to the individual. It's up to you to decide what is best for you. I believe that there is a place for different type of investment. I don't fit into one mold in terms of type of investor. I don't fit into a dividend investor. I don't fit into growth investor. I don't fit into index fund investor. I don't fit into any of those, because I believe they have their place in my basket of portfolios. There is no reason to select exclusively just one. It's like sandpaper. You don't just have one grade of sandpaper. You have different grades of sandpaper depending on what stage of you sanding that wood, right? The same thing with mechanic. They have different tool sets, different tools in the toolbox. Different investment type have their pros and cons. And as long as you know the benefit and the risk, and you know how much to allocate to that, why not take advantage of different type of investment? There are plenty of resources on the internet on how to read the financial statement, what different type of key metrics to look for as an investor. You can research on your own and see if you can understand that material. Or if you don't like to read the financial statement, listen to the quarterly earnings and keep up the tap on the company's progress, then you can buy baskets of fund like S&P 500 or ETF exchange traded funds that focus on certain industry, certain sector. Regardless of what you pick, never ever listen to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your boss, or me, or any influencers to pick what they suggest you to pick. And if you do that, if they pick that stock that was once hot and that's on to cool down, and they didn't have the time to update you and you didn't see it, now you could be holding on to a dud. Shifting from a consumer mindset to ownership mindset, from consumer mindset to investor mindset, have enabled me to not only save for years to come, but also enjoy life today, because I get to buy a lot of things that I want without sacrificing my future, because I have that delayed gratification where I plant and seed my seed money into the market and harvest the profit to buy what I want.